Welcome back, everyone. My name's Alex. That's Eileen, and you're watching Straight to the Chicane podcast. And today we're going to be talking about the Austrian GP. It's the Red Bull Ring.
Yes.
We had sprint this weekend. We had weather this weekend.
We did.
I don't know. We had a lot of stuff going on. A lot
Some
going on.
Upgrades.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff.
So I think we just kind of got to start with all the things that kind of led up to the weekend. If you can refresh my memory, it's been a minute. We've had here in America, we've had the 4th of July and everything. So we're a little late getting out to you guys, but
Yes.
Here we are. We're talking Austria.
We're ultra delayed.
We're ultra delayed.
Just
yes.
like the penalties.
And that was another reason why I wanted to wait too. Yeah, bringing that up is that it was a day later. They were changing.
It was like 8 hours, which is like a day.
Yeah,
I
for
mean,
everyone else, a lot of people that was people woke up to that.
People flew home from the race already,
Yeah.
and they wake up or they get off the flight and they're in a different position.
So needless to say, it was a crazy weekend. It was
a lot.
typical, yet crazy, yet really good and interesting, and all of the above. Just like most of the weekends tend to be, kind of.
Yeah.
But yeah, what happened?
Felt like we hadn't had a sprint race in like 100 years. So and I was like, oh my God, it's a sprint weekend.
I know. I kind of forgot about the first one that we've already had, and this is the second, right?
This is the second.
And I forgot that it seemed like it's been a minute.
It's a good one, yeah.
So,
you enjoyed it. Highly enjoyed it.
I personally think this was the best sprint since we've started doing sprints over the last 2 years.
Well, the first sprint was in Baku, so
Yeah.
it's kind of tough, but yeah. No, it was a great race, sprint race, because of the weather. So, but yes, leading into the weekend, so we had a week off in between Montreal, which we went to, so it was a great experience. If you didn't know we went. So I would say the biggest news was obviously McLaren was bringing a whole, basically new package just for Lando for the weekend. So in speculation, I was a little skeptical. McLaren hasn't been in the points, and obviously in Montreal, neither car was in the points. So I'm like, how are they going to perform this weekend?
Yeah.
And they did. I mean, it was great to see. So
it seems
pretty much looks like a Red Bull.
And it seems like the upgrades definitely worked.
Yeah.
Lando's back in the top 5, which was he's kind of back where he was kind of in.
He loves the Red Bull Ring though. He always performs.
He does.
Really well.
He does. I think he's qualified.
He was on the podium last year. I think
twice.
2 years ago. Yeah. So he's always had a good race. So we saw that was the big upgrade that was coming. I think, Aston Martin, we talked about last episode was they brought their upgrades, but they didn't really see a whole lot of changes in Canada. So they were like, how are we going to maximize?
There was, because the weather was so shitty in Canada that they weren't really able to test all of the new upgrades that they got. And,
we didn't really see much. I mean, I don't think anything spectacular came out of any of the Aston upgrades this week. Because not a great weekend for them.
No, really not.
They capitalized on the Mercedes issues.
They did, but they didn't really. They weren't in the top 5. We're
used to. I mean, I think Alonso said we're never going to not end on the podium for the rest of the season.
Yeah. Okay.
So
we'll see.
It was tricky, but the big news was. I keep saying that. The big news. There was so much news. Big news was Alpine. I'm like Ryan Reynolds and the guy. I'm like I can't think of his name.
Rob, right from
It's Always Sunny.
Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Him and Ryan Reynolds. You're right.
They bought 24%
of Alpine
of equity in Alpine. So that's super exciting for them. I mean, I think Esteban was talking about how he was starstruck when he met Ryan Reynolds.
Sure.
And just the amount of influx that brings into the team, obviously going into the next year.
It brings interest, it brings media, it brings probably sponsors.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know who those two guys are, they're both Hollywood guys.
I do not know who Ryan Reynolds
is.
is.
Right. Okay. So, recently, within a year or two ago, they bought a soccer team. Mm-hmm. And they took that soccer team and they won their division last year or this year. So they have a success now story of sports, and now they are sports owners. And I think they are taking their success, what they did in soccer, and they're going to try and do it in Alpine. I think it's the right move. I think a lot of celebrities are doing that across all sports right now.
If Alpine can get some consistency.
Yeah.
Which maybe this money will get them some consistency.
I mean,
their driver lineup is good.
Driver lineup's pretty good.
Okay, don't judge him after this week.
It's good. It's good. I'm not going to deny that. Are they able to even meet the salary cap? I think they were meeting the salary caps already, so I don't know how much more money. I think you can probably shift money around so you have more money allocated elsewhere. Elsewise, probably. I don't know.
But pretty cool. I mean, obviously, being American fans, seeing more, like, obviously we know the exposure with Drive to Survive has really built the excitement in America. We've got 3 races this year, which is crazy. So I think that we're just going to continue to see more. So that was the big news. And then I think going into the weekend, I mean, obviously we're coming off some really tough weeks for Sergio since Monaco. And
he's had it rough.
And he was sick on Thursday. So the big speculation was Danny Ricciardo, but then he did bounce back. Now, I don't think Checo was feeling good all weekend, but we did see him in qualifying on Friday.
Yep.
And did not have a good qualifying again. Now, that leads us to, I guess, the elephant in the room of track limits. Because the reason he didn't qualify and get into Q3 is because all 3 of his Q2 laps were deleted.
Yeah, and that was the qualifying for the main race.
Yes.
Yeah, yep.
So I'm like, everyone is getting heavily criticized for track limits. Now, I felt like this race last year was excessive. I think there was like 70-something laps deleted last year.
Yep.
This year, over 100. And 1,200 laps had to be up for review to the FIA. Like, that's kind of insane. At what point is this getting to be a little excessive?
Well, I don't know.
We're at that point.
I think they're breaking the rules. And if we're going to talk about now, and I hope most of you guys have seen, it was crazy all weekend with track limits. And that's the thing that kind of tends to happen here.
Yes.
Happened, like you said it. It happened last year, and there was a lot of infringements. I think that the FIA had more people, more personnel, and they had more people monitoring. And I think that's why they found so many more things they needed to review, is because they're more adamant, more watching it more closely.
Well, the problem is...
But they could have done better, probably, because I feel like people were mad that certain drivers didn't get...
Certain drivers didn't get penalized.
But maybe they got black and yellowed on this,
black and yellow, black and white.
Black and white on, turn 2 or turn 8 or turn 10, because it was mostly turn 10. But, maybe,
I don't know.
I don't know how they... I couldn't tell you.
All I know is that they weren't keeping as close track because the race rules, the race ended, and then it was like, I keep wanting to say Alonso, because it probably was Alonso. He was probably watching the monitors, watching the race, and tallying in his car while he was driving 250 miles an hour. People going off the track because he misses nothing. So Aston Martin filed the appeal about, okay, they need to look into these things, and it was upheld. So then it was like, okay, things are about to change. So race control didn't really, monitor all those issues. And then on top of everything, all the drivers were just snitching on each other.
Well, that was the main race. And not really qualifying, and not
the sprint race. They couldn't really go. I mean, they weren't going as fast because obviously.
Well, the sprint race is a different story because the conditions, and that kept them off the curbs and off that racing line that would push you out because. You're right, because it's slicker out there, and they're on the paint. There's paint.
Slower, because that was the thing. Is it's like, oh well, if you can't keep it within the white lines, then go slower. So
then what's the answer? Since we're talking track limits, we're talking here at the Red Bull Ring. What do you do differently? I've heard some drivers say, add a strip of grass, the length of the car, the width of the car. I mean.
Put sausage curbs back.
I've heard sausage curbs.
Potentially destroy your car.
And I also heard put gravel. Now, here's the problem with gravel and the sausage curbs is that other series, MotoGP, other things, cars and motorcycles come there to race. So gravel tracks aren't really good for motorcycles. And sausage curbs cause motorcycles to fly as well, and that's dangerous too. So they have a predicament. However, I think the best would be probably the stretch of grass. It would make them lift off, and if you went out there, you have the run's tendency to probably go sideways if you don't lift off.
Yeah. I don't know. It just felt crazy excessive. And then just the fact that it was like a circus after with like all these people getting penalties. And I mean, Lewis got the first 5-second penalty. Then I think it was Yuki. Then it was Carlos because Carlos like had to push it to the limit because he got kind of screwed over on his pit stop. And so it's like, you know, and that was pretty early on, like 12 to 15 to 20, no more than 20 laps. They were already dishing out penalties with a 70-plus lap track. So we knew it was going to be crazy. And then it was just, you know, just the fact that you don't know. So it's not like, oh, you're about to get another penalty. And then the race ends and then you're getting 30-second penalties. Ocon, he's got to start the race 3 laps behind in Silverstone because he's gotten so many penalties.
Is that true?
I'm joking. But basically, he might as well. He's not allowed to be in a race until next year because he got so many penalties.
No, yeah.
The memes have been ridiculous. Yeah. Like, he literally created his own circuit. Like, he was off the track. And the crazy part about it is he ends the race and they're like, his engineer says, oh, you know, lots of penalties up and down the track for track limits or up and down the grid for track limits. And he's like, oh, thank God I didn't get any. And his engineer's like,
yep.
Yeah,
good
job.
Good thing.
Just kidding.
I don't know what you do better. I think there's a whole lot going on. I don't know how you can monitor every single turn, the entry and exit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think it's really tough. I think there's always going to be a little bit of delay, and that's why we saw it in the qualifying, and that's why you're right. Sergio Perez did get screwed and get put in the P15th when I think he was up there. I think he was putting down nearly the fastest laps with Verstappen and everybody else too. You know,
he looked better pace wise. I mean, he had a great race on Sunday too, but. Even for the sprint, I think he did a good job because, you know, he ended up there. So, I don't know. I mean, it was all weekend track limits. It's hard to keep track of it. It's so much. And then it's just like, are we really seeing, like, the quality? Because then it's like, I listened to Albon talk about how, well, you get a little gust of wind and you go wide. And, you know, like, because everyone's criticizing them, like, oh, these are the best drivers in the world, and they can't even keep it between the white lines. Well, like, look, there's a lot of factors.
There is.
Yeah.
You're absolutely correct. There are a lot of factors. And it is a little bit of wind. It could be a little bit of
dirty air.
Dirty air. Like, yep, you're right. Mm-hmm. And it could be, they're always pushing it to the max on the line. And, yeah, the slightest variance will cause you. The tire wear from last lap to this lap, you're off. Yeah, without a doubt. I can't imagine even myself trying to keep that on the track, you know, at the speeds and control and smoothness that they have. I don't know. I don't get the criticism. I think that they are the top drivers. I think they're pushing the track limits at that location because they can, because it is a really good racing track for other events. That, you know, that they are going off. So we just need to figure out how to keep them from going off.
Yeah.
You know, because it seems to be that this Austria, the Red Bull Ring, seems to be the worst. Where else do we talk about this much track limits?
We don't talk about track limits anywhere else.
Well, definitely not this much.
No, I remember last year, I actually went back to see, because I know we titled an episode, Is F1 a Circus?
Well, this week was.
And I was like, I feel like it was Austria last year, but it wasn't. I think it was a Red Bull 1-2 almost, because Leclerc won in 2022.
Sure.
Max had an issue. Like, I want to say he had damage or something.
I think you're right. He had floor damage or something like that.
And Carlos was about to catch Max and pass him, and then his car blew up. So I'm like, that was the title. But I know we titled something as F1 a Circus, and I do remember talking about how crazy, like, the lap times being deleted were. So we had, we had 47 laps deleted in qualifying Friday. That doesn't even include the sprint shootout. I didn't even keep track of that. But I know the sprint shootout, Lewis didn't make it through because his lap time was deleted. And then basically there was a miscommunication where he ended up holding up Max a little because Max did a flyer and then didn't like his lap, said it wasn't going to be good enough.
So prepared for another.
Not sure how it wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And so he was going to go for another one. He was mad, so then he intentionally
blocked
Lewis from going again. So Lewis was out.
Yeah, Lewis was out in Q1.
SQ1.
Oh, yeah, sprint shootout.
Sprint shootout, yes.
SSQ.
You have yet to watch a sprint shootout live.
It's true. I get caught working.
You get caught sleeping.
Oh, no.
I set the alarm to get up at like 5:45.
Dude, it's tough here in America.
You didn't even wake up. Well, you will be at the sprint shootout in Austin.
And I won't miss that.
You won't miss that.
That's for sure. And
it's also like going to be 3:00 in the afternoon.
Yeah. It's tough when I'm working late because I
forgot, yes.
I got home at like 1, 2 o'clock in the morning.
I'll give you credit for that.
And I made it for the later event, which was what, 9 a.m.?
Which was the important thing. But yes, I was like, you have got to be kidding me while you're sleeping. But yeah, so that was, the one thing about sprint quali. Second, another Hulkenberg exceptional qualifying performance. He's like out racing the car.
I think he's in good form. He feels good. He's outperforming the car.
Mm-hmm. In qualifying for sure.
Well, because the qualifying pace is phenomenal. It's right there just with the top cars.
Sometimes.
Sometimes when it's not. Maybe when it's perfectly dry conditions and everything is optimal.
He's
but when
good
there's
in the rain.
when there's weather and the track is not perfect.
Yeah.
He's up there with the cars.
Yeah.
With the top top teams for sure. And I think if he had a better car, with better race pace, he would probably do better because he was able to hold off and hold that position because in the sprint race for quite a while. But
yeah.
You could see it happening. Like he was kind of coming slower and slower, and cars behind him were getting closer and closer.
Yeah.
And with that weather, there was that like, do you switch to the softs? Do you stay on the intermediates? Because they started the whole sprint race on intermediates, every team except for Bottas.
Well, he did the formation lap on.
He did the formation lap and then went in because he realized that wasn't the right call. But how many? I don't know how. I think it was over half of the sprint. It was kind of getting to the point where like, do you even?
I mean, the sprint race is only 24 laps, so it's like I think there was maybe 10 laps left, and we started to see some action coming in. But that is what made it exciting. So, that was good to see. What else? I'm like, sprint qualifying. Other than that, I feel like was pretty standard. I'm like, George ended up having great pace and then had an issue.
Yeah.
So he wasn't able to go out. So he was in 15.
There's our dog, Don Pepe, just hanging out. So don't mind him.
Tough weekend for Mercedes.
Yeah.
Disappointing for them. But McLaren looked good. So in sprint qualifying, we saw, a little bit better. But even in qualifying, just in general, we saw Lando perform really well. He was P4. So.
Yeah.
Or no, was he P3?
In qualifying?
Yeah, regular qualifying.
In regular qualifying.
Yeah. I'm like, anyways, it is what
P4.
it is. I'm
P4.
like, yeah, I thought so. So Norris has the upgrade. So clearly we're seeing some, progress here. So hopefully in Silverstone we see Oscar's getting the upgrade. So maybe we'll see them both in the points, which would be good. Other than that, I'm like, the race, pretty standard. We started the race. Everything was dry. Completely normal day in Austria, and I was a little worried because so far Max has just been so damn dominant. What were you worried about? That he wasn't going to win?
No, I just was like worried that it was just going to be a boring race. And I mean, after the sprint race, it was so good.
It was good from P4 down.
I kind of wish, maybe they need to make the artificial weather on the track so there's always a little dampness and there's always a little questionable.
Well, there was question that there was going to be rain at the end of the race. Now, I do think that Max heard everybody talking about how it was boring that he's just winning by so much. So he wanted to pull a little fun card out of the bag and go against his team again. Literally 2 laps to the end of the race to go for fastest lap to take the 1 point away from Perez.
Do you think if it wasn't Perez that had the fastest lap, he would have went in?
No, I think he would have anyways. I don't think it matters who it is that has the point. I think he wants to maximize every point that's possible.
And have more points than anyone that could ever set the record for the most points in a season.
Yeah. I think Autosport posted, Max is 200,000 points ahead in the championship, but still boxes for fastest lap. I think it's just to check the box. Okay. But it did make it a little exciting because I will say,
Because he came out with...
he was ahead by 24 seconds going into the pits of Leclerc. And he came out and he had like 5.5 seconds, but then he was literally weaving on the straight.
Warming the tires
Warming his tires, charging the battery. He gets within 3 seconds and then finishes the race like almost 6 seconds ahead. Crazy. So he made it a little exciting for Max Verstappen fans at the end there.
He did. And honestly... For everybody else, there was a lot of really good racing. Every other team, like the midfield, had some good passing. There was good stuff happening.
Yeah, there was some good stuff.
You know, a lot of different tire strategies too. And there was talks of 3 stops with Ferrari.
Yeah, but they didn't.
They didn't. Yeah. Max 3 stopped to get the fastest lap.
For the fun of it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think I was a little worried. My least favorite track is Austria. I don't really care for the Red Bull Ring. I think it's high speed. It's fun if you're a driver. For fans, unless you're a diehard Max fan and like a Red Bull fan.
This is race 1 of 3 for Max Verstappen home races too.
Yeah,
Max has as many races that are in U.S. as home races on the calendar.
Yeah. So I think. If you're still enjoying Formula One, if you're like me, it's because you're watching the midfield battle. Mm-hmm. And you're watching some of the teams figure out, like McLaren, like Mercedes, the things they need to do to kind of come back up. And a lot of them are consistent. But
I've enjoyed the Alonso Hamilton.
They've all been consistent.
I've enjoyed the Alonso Hamilton battling this season.
Yeah.
The most. But there has been some really good stuff in the midfield. Because, like, the thing is, I mean, last race in Canada was the closest 1-2, which was 9 seconds. Mm-hmm. You know, every other race has been 20-plus seconds. And now, of course, this one looks close, but that's because Max came in. If not, it would have been probably 25, 26 seconds. And so, you know, you don't even watch Max at all, really.
Well, they don't show too much coverage of Max.
Because there's not a lot going on. Like, maybe you get, like, a funny commentary from him, like, oh, I almost knocked myself out on the curb, or, you know, something funny. But other than that, there's not a whole lot. This weekend, we got a little bit in the sprint race because Perez, like, went for the dive.
Well, Perez got a good start, and I did want to bring this up for sure because Perez was leading the sprint for a moment. It was back and forth for a moment.
Till Max dive bombed in
turn 4, and I thought, and I think a lot of people thought that Lando was going to kind of swoop behind them because those two were battling, and they both were like late into the turn, but Max just had so much more grip and kind of forced Lando to kind of go too slow, and then he anti-stalled. Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah. And that just caused him to not be able to, and he actually lost a lot of space.
He had a terrible sprint race because of
the anti-stall, but he almost had the undercut to be in first.
Yeah.
Because the two Red Bulls were battling. And so let me ask you, because this was a hot topic. Both drivers went back and forth on the radio. What did he do? What did he do? Mm-hmm. Dude, who was in the wrong? Who was right? What's your opinion on this?
I mean, I think Checo forced Max wide on the opening straight. And pushed him on the grass.
But what about turn 4?
I think Max just chose. I mean, Max has always been a late breaker. You know, like we've seen it before. We saw it in previous years where he's going to go for it. You know, and I think he was. And I've said it before, when somebody pisses Max off, he's going to just balls to the wall. He's going to go for it. Monza 2021, you know? Like, he was pissed about the freaking pit stop. So he didn't, I don't give up.
Yeah.
You know? But I think that, and I don't know, I mean, they put on a really good show at Red Bull that they're, like, best of friends and everything's fine. But there's definitely some tension there.
For sure.
You know, and the media plays into it, and I think that they've both talked about that this weekend in their interviews. But, you know, I definitely think there's some tension there. So I think Sergio was like, I've got a great start, and we're going to see what's going to happen, and I'm going to go for it. And Max was like, excuse me? So we shall see. But, I mean, Max is consistent. The definition of consistency.
Right now, unstoppable, unbeatable.
He looks unbeatable.
I don't think either of them in the wrong. I think they're both trying to go for it.
It was a racing incident.
Yeah, but what was also crazy for the sprint, and I do want to bring it up, is that
Hulkenberg was in P2?
like P10 and back, which was a lot of top drivers, they were fighting till the very end.
Like they got points.
Like they were getting points. And like you said it during that, like they're not, this is a sprint and they're not even in the points. Like they're going to damage the car.
And it doesn't have anything to do with track position for the Grand Prix anymore. Whereas that's how it was, is like you would qualify for the Grand Prix from the sprint race. And now it's not like that. So it's like, really, if you're out of the points, there's not really any reason for you to really battle at the back. Now, the reason that they were doing this,
you always battle because you're a racer.
Well, no, I think they're smart and they're like, I don't want to damage the car. But with this, it was a gamble, 50-50. Do we go to slicks and gain track advantage because they're obviously going to be faster, or do we stay and rule it out? Which we saw a gamble of both. Some of the front runners didn't pit, like Max.
I think they were just so far ahead that there was no need for them to pit, because they,
like the Ferraris and the Red Bulls.
Well, think about it. If it would have dried up 3 laps earlier, Max might have had a pit because they were, George Russell pitted first.
George Russell will always gamble for slicks, no matter what. I've learned that about him.
Well, especially when he was He was like P10, sitting right around there, kind of near the back, like close to points.
He was P11.
Okay, so.
Yeah, so it was like, hey, we're out of the points. Let's just do it. And then he came in, and then the majority of the midfield came in. And then it got exciting. They were chasing people down.
Yeah.
Gasly,
like 3-4 seconds faster than Max and those guys. And so, like I said, if it would have been drier just a little bit sooner, and maybe it was, I just think maybe they kind of held off and gambled, and then George finally, did the gamble because he always will.
And then everybody followed
But
suit.
maybe they could have did it a lap sooner, maybe 3 laps sooner. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it was close because you heard drivers and their team talking to them. Hey, what do you think about this area, Sector 2? I've watched playback now of them talk. A lot of teams talking and like, oh, Sector 1's close or it's ready, but Sector 3's not, or vice versa. So they were wondering too, and I think they probably could have done it maybe a lap sooner.
Yeah, that's what made it. That's what made the sprint very interesting. We saw Ocon and Russell to the line, almost like a picture finish. That was cool.
Yeah. That's why I feel like the sprint qualifying here, or the sprint race here, was really good. I really enjoyed it.
There was definitely more excitement than there was in the race.
Yeah.
I think the reason I'm like tarnished from the race though is because I didn't really like enjoy it, because it was like penalty. And then it was like, and then I'm like, okay, whatever, the race is over. It is what it is. And then it's like penalty. And I'm like,
I mean, it changed. It changed the top 10, and people that were in the top 10, some people got kicked out because they got so many.
Some people got promoted, like Lance Stroll got promoted up. I think he finished P10. He ended P9, which that's huge when you think of the difference between Aston Martin and Mercedes in the constructors. I mean, every point for them matters right now. So,
that's right.
And then same thing with Ferrari. I mean, we haven't even bridged the Ferrari conversation for the weekend. I have a lot of feelings about Ferrari.
Well, let's hear them. Go ahead.
I was like really assuming that Ferrari was going to do Carlos right this weekend. And he was the faster Ferrari, in my opinion. I don't know, but he looked pretty damn fast. Then under the pit strategy in the safety car, they brought him in and he was like, why didn't we stay out? Then he's like powering through. He ends up burning his tires up, gets a penalty because he's trying to claw his way back because he got, I think, overtaken by Lewis and by Lando in the pits because they did a double stack.
Yeah.
And it just felt like they just screwed him over. And, and then, so they had to pit again because for some reason Ferrari went medium hard instead of just medium hard. I don't know. And so then, he's clawing his way back, has to pit again, has to serve his 5-second penalty, comes out, he's got to claw his way back through. And then, Perez was on the charge at that point, which, I think ultimately helped Leclerc not have it be a Red Bull 1-2. Because Perez was quick. He was moving that car. He was slicing and dicing, and he was driver of the day, in my opinion.
But it wasn't him.
But it was Lando.
Lando got driver of the day by everyone that voted.
Did Lando get driver of the day because of his qualifying and his upgraded car and the way that he did things? Did he get it because he was on the radio being a steward? What did he get it for?
I think people were excited to see him back near the top again and seeing that those upgrades did work. I think I'm with you. I think I'm with my driver of the day was Perez. From P15.
I think we're with a lot of people.
P15, right, to P3, and if there was a little bit better timing with certain things, he probably could have.
If Carlos didn't hold him up for those laps, I mean, they were battling back and forth, and I think the issue was Carlos was strategically placing the car so every time he got DRS, so he was able to like rebattle and re-overtake.
It's so funny on how some drivers have that intuition and smarter than some of the others. Because look, I mean, Perez is smart in his own right. Like he's able to be very good on his tires and have them run the whole way.
His engineer probably should have said something to him the first time, like, "Hey,
totally.
He's setting it up to do this."
He's setting you up.
On the third lap, it was like, okay, come on.
Yeah,
you know?
It took a little longer for him to realize what was happening because. In Austria, it's when you go into the middle sections, it's really you can't pass. You just you gotta get in line and get through it. And
they only have 10 turns, and the turns are like this.
Yeah, and it's all high, it's a lot of high speed, it is fast, and then there's 3 DRS zones. Mm-hmm. So like there's only certain spots you can really pass, and it is using the DRS to really get by. Yeah. And if you're able to have a little bit of power, because Ferrari's cars are looking a lot better. They're getting there.
I gotta give it to Ferrari. The one thing, they may mess up a lot of things, but their car has not had any reliability issues. Now, I mean, we've seen it on Haas. Haas has definitely had its fair share. It's a Ferrari engine, but we haven't seen it from Ferrari. And we really haven't seen a whole lot of reliability issues this year at all. Maybe Alpine, but...
I think for the most part, no, you're right. I think a lot of the cars are a lot more stable. Yeah. And there's been a lot more consistency compared to what it was last year, for sure. You're right about that. I mean, we're 9 races in?
10.
10 races in.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it 10? Is it 10 or is it... I'm like so thrown off. I know we're going into round 11, but I'm like...
But we had a race that got canceled.
I thought it was 10 races in Canada. So I'm like, are they like I don't know. Now I'm all thrown off. But anyways, with the Carlos and Perez battle, what were your thoughts on the intimidating comment? Like, I think we're all confused. People are calling Carlos the Karen of the weekend because he was saying he was being intimidated. It has to mean something else. Like, he had to have been like, oh, he's doing something wrong.
I think it had to have meant something else because maybe he was pushing him in certain areas to go and try to block more. Because I don't know. I think...
Like, intimidating. I'm like, is he scared?
I mean, look. I mean, the Red Bull car was probably faster. And it was probably able to get into the corners closer to him and kind of say, oh, I'm going to sneak by. But I that's how I took it, is that he was toying with him in certain areas that maybe the gentleman's agreement in racing they wouldn't normally do.
So he was like pulling up on the side and he was like intimidating him.
Yep.
I mean, he came on the radio twice. The first time, here's the thing about the driver's radio, maybe because we're American, everybody's got an accent. So sometimes I'm like, what did he say? What did they say? So I'm like, maybe he's saying something else. And then the second time when it came up with like graphic, and I was like, okay, he's definitely saying intimidating. And I still haven't been able to decipher if it meant something else. So I don't know.
Yeah, and you're right.
I think it was a good little tussle, though.
Good tussle. Good to see Ferrari doing a little bit better. They need to get every call right. And
Charles Leclerc could still win the championship.
No, I mean, sure, he could win by 1 point theoretically if all these things happen. I don't know if Charles Leclerc can do it because I think he makes mistakes every race. Little ones that cost little.
I don't think he made any mistakes this weekend.
Maybe not this weekend. I mean, throughout the weekend he definitely did for sure. I
think his race pace was a lot slower, but qualifying looked really good. But I think Charles always looks really good in I shouldn't say always, but he typically does look good. I mean, this was the closest qualifying we've had all year. It was like less than a tenth. Was half a tenth between Max and Charles.
Yeah.
I mean, this was the closest qualifying from P1 to P20 was less than 9/10. So
great. That's what it should be. They should all be within a second.
Yeah.
You know, I like the fact that all the cars are different and it's not like NASCAR or IndyCar where it's like a stock car. You know, I like the fact that teams can build their own thing.
Yeah.
You know, but they're, you know.
Well, speaking of that, how could we not bring up the Max versus Lewis drama of the weekend? Last race, they were best friends, okay?
Yeah.
They were besties.
Yeah, they were good.
They were like, oh, we love each other. World champion. Let's take a selfie. Yeah. Now, it's like Lewis makes a comment, and then Max makes a comment because the media has to spark this controversy. So, I mean, I kind of agree. Like, so what Lewis's comment was, should there be a time where they're not able, like, you know, this is your time when you can actually start on your next year's car. So he said, like, after summer break. Because obviously Red Bull's so dominant now that it's like, well, we don't even have to do any upgrades this season. We could just start working on next year's car. So they're already, like, a league ahead of everybody else. So, you know, he makes this comment. He's like, oh, you know, the FIA should do something, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, they asked Max, hey, so, Max, what do you think about Lewis's comment? And Max says...
Go ahead.
He doesn't remember.
All right.
Max says, we weren't asking these questions when he was winning championships. Yeah. But there also wasn't a cost cap back then, you know? So things have changed. And I did look back at previous seasons. Now, we know Mercedes was dominant. But for the championship and the driver standings... It was never this big of a gap at this part of the season. I mean, we saw like Nico and Lewis. It was like 4 points. We saw Vettel, like, and Lewis, you know. So there was some tight, you know, like actual contention in the Drivers' Championship. Now, Mercedes, yes, they did run away because both their cars were dominant.
Yeah.
Which we should be seeing with Red Bull, which we are. But think about it. Perez was like, if they were P1 and P2 every weekend, they'd be like winning the championship in like 5 races.
5 more races, you're right.
You know? Like, they've won every race this year. They've won 19 of the last 20 races. This is crazy.
It is crazy. I think something should change. The Lewis comment about them waiting for a time, it's a good idea. I think I don't think it's possible because there's so much R&D going into so many aspects of the car. That, you know, there's things that they're working on that might be 3 years down the line. You know what I mean?
Like, what year was it? Was it 2020 or 2021 when Haas was like, we're not even working on our car. We're just going to the development of next year.
Exactly.
And it's like they ran that gamble, but how much did it really pay off?
For them, right? Well, I mean,
you know what? They did get. They started getting in the points. I think it was 2020 to 21, or maybe 21 to 22, whatever season.
21 to 20.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like, I mean, it paid off a little bit, but if you think, like, is a top team like a Mercedes, like a McLaren, Aston Martin, a Ferrari, are they just going to just not upgrade their car and be in challenging contention? Now, they think with their upgrades, Mercedes speaking specifically with Toto, that they still at some point can challenge Red Bull. So they're not going to give up hope.
I hope so. Good luck.
So before summer break, so this upcoming weekend in Silverstone, they're bringing a new front wing. And then I think in Spa, they're bringing a new rear wing and a new floor. So they're essentially bringing an entire new package than they showed up with early, you know, this race 1. So
I heard there's a new racer at Silverstone this coming week.
There is. I don't know what the team is called, though.
Yeah.
But what's his name? Why can't I think of his
Hayes.
name?
Sonny Hayes?
Sonny Hayes, yes. Brad Pitt. So, yeah, that's pretty cool to see, though. I'm not going to lie. Now, I'm interested. Like, is he going to be in practice? Like, what's he going to be, like, mixed into? I haven't really done the research, but he did get a super license pushed for Brad Pitt. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, they granted him a super license, which people are pissed off about.
For sure.
Because Colton Herta, who was supposed to be an
actual
this year
driver.
And is an actual driver, but couldn't get enough points, and they gave Brad Pitt a super license.
It's for the movie, and it's probably temporary. I understand that.
I'm sure it is, but I am curious to hear how it's going to go this weekend in Silverstone. So, I would assume he's not going to be in qualifying, obviously, but maybe out there in practice. And what kind of chaos is that going to cause?
Yeah. I don't know what kind of chaos. Look,
it's Lewis's movie, so I'm like, is he going to be distracted? The movie's called Apex, so we determined that this weekend, too.
Oh, they announced that name?
Yeah, they announced that. Okay. So it's called Apex. He's got his own garage. It's real fancy.
It is. Look, I'm glad Austria is over. Like I said, it's my least favorite, and I'm ready to move on because it's always.
I already moved on.
You did, you did, and I'm glad it's behind us now.
Yeah. It was a good weekend though. It was action packed.
It was, and like I said, I will say it again. It was, my opinion, the best qualifying. I'm curious on your guys' opinion, what you guys thought of the weekend, what you thought of the sprint race.
I'm saying that Monaco was still the best qualifying of this year.
Best qualifying.
Yes, you said qualifying. I think you meant sprint race.
Sprint race. Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
Well, we've got 3 more to come. We'll be at the U.S. one, so that'll probably be the best one.
Yeah, and so another thing is you put on our Instagram all the average ticket prices, or
the average 3-day.
She put on there, so they've posted about the average 3-day ticket prices across all the tracks this year, right? Mm-hmm. And some of them are all reasonably priced.
The majority of them are reasonable.
So the cheapest place, the best place for your buck is?
I can't even think right now.
It's not Bahrain. I think that was the second lowest.
Yeah, Bahrain was second.
Hungary.
Yes, Hungary was the cheapest weekend.
So they say
cheapest bang for your buck.
Yeah.
For an average. And that includes GA probably up to your grandstand. So the average. So that doesn't, of course, if you're getting a grandstand ticket, it's going to be more expensive. But it's no surprise that Vegas is the most expensive. But the range from $200, $20,
yeah,
220 euros, whatever the measurement was,
to almost 2,000 euros.
2,000 is ridiculous.
It is.
And I have offense that Miami is the second highest, race weekend. I think that's offensive.
I do too.
Speaking as an American who's been to Miami, but I can't believe no, it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't. It's not that great of a track for it to be that expensive. And I don't even know.
And I think Monaco is just above Austin. Mm-hmm. And you would think Monaco being Monaco, it's a staple.
Yeah.
It would be super expensive.
You're right. I figured it would have been way more than what it was. But yeah, I think it was an interesting thing. And if you haven't seen it, you should check it out on our IG. It's straight to the chicane. F1. We have.
It's just straight to the chicane.
Oh, it is straight to the chicane. Thanks. But yeah, so we're also on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify.
Come talk shit with us.
Please. We're on YouTube, and if you're watching the video, you're watching this on YouTube. And if you've made it this far, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it. Please subscribe, whatever it is that you guys do to help generate, and it helps us because we want more people to watch. Anyway, so I guess that's it for me, unless you got some more titling big news.
I don't know. I feel like there was so much I had to rehash the weekend, but I'm sure we missed something.
Oh, we always do.
We always do, and then I'm like, man, we forgot to talk about that. But it was a great weekend. We've got another race here in a few days.
Yes.
And then we've got another race after that, which is exciting. So triple header to close out, or double header, whatever, to close out before summer break.
Yep.
So we've got some upgrades coming.
Yep.
We'll talk about the F1 2024 calendar on the next episode that dropped today.
All right, well, let's get out of here before she gets a track limit flag.
Oh, so we're over the limit.
Until then, we'll see you guys next week. All right, bye.
Bye.